Keir Starmer.
We've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working-class woman.
The Supreme Court has delivered a bombshell ruling that could end Keir Starmer's career and plunge the United Kingdom into its gravest constitutional crisis in modern history. In a stunning judgment, the nation's highest court ordered the Prime Minister to resign immediately over a scandal involving a missing £124,000, undeclared luxury gifts, and a brazen attempt to silence critics. This is not mere politics, it is a direct showdown between the courts, the government, and the Crown. The question gripping the nation is clear: will Starmer step down quietly, or drag Britain into chaos in one last desperate bid to cling to power? Westminster is electric, the air thick with shock and disbelief. Minutes ago, the Supreme Court issued a ruling so explosive it shattered every expectation of political order. In a historic televised statement, Chief Justice Dame Sue Carr did not simply criticize the Prime Minister, she demanded his resignation. Her words were brutal, final, delivered with icy clarity: no one, not even the Prime Minister, is above the law. With that declaration, Starmer's grip on power began to unravel before the nation. The court exposed a staggering £124,000 discrepancy in his property records, funds mysteriously missing from official tax filings. And that was only the beginning. The ruling also revealed £39,000 in undeclared luxury perks, private jet flights, designer suits, rare wines, even a Rolex worth months of a family's income, all quietly funneled to him by billionaire donors seeking influence. For months, whispers of financial misconduct had swirled around Downing Street. Today, those whispers became undeniable proof. Investigators traced money through offshore accounts, shadow firms in Jersey and the Isle of Man, and even a mysterious £52,000 consulting fee from a defense contractor desperate for government approval. No invoices. No contracts. Just a direct transfer. Influence peddling, textbook style. And the hypocrisy cuts deeper. While Starmer publicly condemned Tory tax dodgers, behind closed doors he quietly pocketed favors from billionaire backers. Leaked emails exposed donors demanding policy shifts in exchange for lavish gifts, and disturbingly, Starmer delivered. Regulations were quietly relaxed, investigations shelved, rivals silenced through intimidation. The Supreme Court's judgment was unflinching, branding his actions a betrayal of public trust so severe it threatened the very foundations of British democracy. The fallout was immediate and ferocious. Protesters flooded London's streets within minutes of the verdict, chanting, demanding justice. Opposition leaders seized the moment, calling for snap elections, while senior Labour MPs began publicly breaking ranks. One described him as a disgrace in a red tie. Even his closest allies whispered behind closed doors, urging resignation before the party collapsed under the weight of scandal. Yet Starmer refused to yield. In a defiant late-night address, he dismissed the court's ruling as politically motivated and vowed to remain in office. That single act of defiance transformed a financial scandal into a full-blown constitutional crisis. For the first time in centuries, Britain faces the unthinkable, a prime minister rejecting a direct order from the Supreme Court. As hours passed, the nation held its breath, witnessing a political earthquake unfold in real time. What began as a £124,000 scandal had spiraled into an unprecedented standoff between the law and the highest office in the land. Inside Number 10, the atmosphere was apocalyptic. Aides shredded documents, burned files, and resigned mid-meeting. Multiple senior advisors walked out, while cabinet ministers quietly drafted no-confidence letters. Yet Starmer, more defiant than ever, vowed in private meetings with his dwindling inner circle to fight to the very end, dismissing the court's ruling as a judicial coup. Those words poured fuel on the fire, sending shockwaves through Whitehall and igniting public fury. The Supreme Court's ruling went far beyond finances. Buried in the judgment were damning revelations. Starmer allegedly weaponized his office to silence opponents and manipulate democracy. Government lawyers were instructed to threaten journalists probing his finances, regulators leaned on to sideline Reform UK from televised debates, and critical donors suddenly targeted with surprise tax audits. A paper trail of emails, memos, and sworn testimony painted a chilling portrait of a prime minister using government machinery not to serve citizens, but to crush opposition and protect himself. The court called it a systemic assault on the foundations of democracy. Public anger reached a boiling point. Tens of thousands poured into London, erecting barricades outside Parliament, chanting for justice. Riot police were deployed, armoured vehicles stationed near the Supreme Court. Cries of "Resign now" and "Starmer out" echoed through Westminster as clashes erupted between demonstrators and security forces. Social media is ablaze with viral footage of protesters waving placards that read, "No one is above the law." On the streets, the message is unmistakable: this is no longer about party politics. It is about whether Britain is governed by law or whether one man can place himself above it. The most dramatic twist has come from Buckingham Palace itself. Breaking centuries of tradition, insiders reveal that King Charles has cut short his holiday at Balmoral, returning to London for emergency meetings with constitutional advisors. Whispers from the palace suggest that the nuclear option is now on the table, the use of the royal prerogative to dismiss a prime minister, a power used since 1834, could be unleashed as Britain teeters on the edge of a constitutional abyss. Political historians are reportedly reeling at the prospect of Crown and Commons clashing head-on. "This is the gravest democratic crisis since the English Civil War," one scholar told the BBC, as cameras rolled outside Westminster Abbey. Even the Archbishop of Canterbury has weighed in, declaring from the pulpit that no leader, however powerful, is above God's law. International reactions have been equally stunned. The White House issued a rare midnight statement, expressing concern about Britain's constitutional collapse, while European leaders convened emergency summits to anticipate political and financial fallout. The pound has already plummeted to levels unseen since the 2008 financial crisis, and markets brace for further turmoil. Diplomats are quietly drafting contingency plans for the unthinkable. Inside the UK, civil servants are openly defying orders they deem unlawful. Permanent secretaries have reportedly restricted Starmer's access to certain state functions, with one source noting, "We serve the Crown, not a rogue administration." The military has also been placed on standby, with generals warning the defense secretary they will refuse unlawful commands from Downing Street. For the British public, the question is no longer whether Keir Starmer is guilty, the Supreme Court has made that clear. The pressing question is what happens when a prime minister refuses to step aside. Each hour he clings to power, the tension escalates. Every statement he makes further destabilizes the country. Yet Starmer remains holed up inside Number 10, issuing defiant proclamations as if authority still resides with him. But it has already slipped through his fingers. The standoff has reached its most perilous phase. Outside, Britain's institutions are beginning to fracture under the strain. The House of Commons has descended into chaos. MPs shout across the chamber, wave resignation letters, and demand that the Speaker take control. In the House of Lords, the Lord Speaker has invoked an obscure parliamentary rule not used in over a century, recalling peers without government approval. The constitutional machinery is grinding into action against the Prime Minister, but Starmer's defiance is pushing the nation into uncharted, dangerous waters. Never in modern history has a British Prime Minister openly defied the ruling of the nation's highest court. Legal experts are calling it not just a scandal, but an outright assault on the rule of law. And the evidence against him continues to pour out, layer by damning layer. Forensic accountants working alongside Scotland Yard have traced millions of pounds funneled through offshore accounts, many linked to shadow companies in notorious tax havens. Investigators uncovered a secret network of shell firms tied to donors who received government favours in return. Among the most shocking revelations, a £52,000 wire transfer from a defence contractor seeking approval for a £1 billion deal, no invoices, no contracts, just money that reeked of influence buying. The court described it as a bribe in everything but name. Whistleblowers from Labour's own finance team have stepped forward, describing a culture of fear where questioning suspicious transactions could cost you your job. One aide told investigators, "If you asked where the money went, you were gone by morning." The portrait that emerges is not of a government in office, but of a syndicate operating in the shadows of Westminster. Outside, the streets have erupted. What began as thousands of protesters has swelled into hundreds of thousands. Barricades now block Parliament Square, the air thick with chants of "Lock him up." Videos flood social media showing clashes between demonstrators and riot police. Commentators warn that continued defiance could spark civil unrest on a scale not seen in decades. The symbolism is stark: the people on one side, the courts on another, the crown preparing to act, and a lone, embattled prime minister refusing to surrender. Inside Whitehall, the machinery of state is quietly turning against him. Senior civil servants have frozen his access to sensitive documents, restricted his communication channels, and even limited his control over nuclear protocols, citing concerns about his judgment. One permanent secretary remarked bluntly, "The Prime Minister no longer governs. He occupies a building." The Bank of England has taken the extraordinary step of freezing accounts linked to Labour donors under investigation. Scotland Yard has confirmed the creation of a special task force to pursue potential criminal charges. Starmer is no longer merely fighting for his political career, he is fighting for his freedom. Legal experts warn that continued resistance could see him held in contempt of court, opening the door to arrest. Perhaps the darkest shadow over the crisis is the murmur of military involvement. Senior generals, alarmed by the Prime Minister's refusal to step down, have reportedly told the Defense Secretary that they will not obey unlawful orders from Number 10. Rumors circulate of units placed discreetly around London. Though Downing Street denies these reports, eyewitnesses confirm armored vehicles stationed near strategic locations. The military has not intervened in British politics for centuries, yet the possibility now looms, casting a long, ominous shadow over a nation on the brink. Commentators warn that the line between democracy and authoritarianism is being tested to breaking point. Britain's institutions strain under the weight of one man's defiance, and the chilling question grows louder: how far is Keir Starmer willing to go to cling to power? Every passing hour tightens the noose. Every refusal deepens the crisis. The Supreme Court's verdict was meant to end the scandal. Instead, it has unleashed the most dangerous constitutional showdown in modern history. The Crown is preparing to act. The courts are preparing contempt proceedings. The streets are preparing for confrontation. At the center of it all stands a Prime Minister once hailed as a symbol of integrity. Britain teeters on the edge of a constitutional abyss. With each moment that Starmer clings to office in defiance of the Supreme Court, the possibility of direct royal intervention grows stronger. Behind the gilded walls of Buckingham Palace, emergency meetings unfold at a pace unseen in living memory. The King's private secretaries consult constitutional scholars, Supreme Court justices, and senior members of Parliament, preparing for scenarios once considered unthinkable. The nuclear option, the royal prerogative to dismiss a sitting Prime Minister, has been placed on the table. This power, untouched since 1834, is now the nation's last line of defense against a government spiraling into lawlessness. Palace insiders reveal three possible courses of action: a private ultimatum giving Starmer 48 hours to resign, a public rebuke at the state opening of Parliament, stripping the government of legitimacy, or the most extreme, King Charles addressing the nation directly in a live broadcast, declaring the Starmer government unlawful and dismissed. That last option would be a constitutional earthquake, shattering centuries of convention and igniting debates for generations. Meanwhile, the machinery of state grinds against the Prime Minister. The Cabinet Secretary has frozen access to sensitive defense protocols, placing nuclear command codes under secure lock. Civil servants openly defy ministerial orders, insisting their loyalty lies with the Crown. One permanent secretary put it bluntly: "We are no longer carrying out his commands. We are maintaining the functions of the state until this crisis ends." Whitehall is in revolt. This is no longer a government in control, but a Prime Minister isolated in his residence, cut off from the levers of power. The reaction abroad is staggering. Foreign capitals watch in disbelief as one of the world's oldest democracies unravels in real time. Washington officials compile lists of alternative British contacts should Starmer's government collapse. Brussels convenes late-night emergency summits to contain financial fallout, with the pound already at its weakest since 2008. NATO officials question whether Britain's fractured leadership can be relied upon in an emergency. Allies who once trusted Britain now whisper nervously about the possibility of civil breakdown. On the streets, fury intensifies. Hundreds of thousands of protesters fill Westminster, Trafalgar Square, and beyond, waving banners reading "Democracy, not dictatorship" and "Starmer out now." Barricades rise, chants echo like thunder, and makeshift camps form outside Parliament. Police in riot gear brace for escalating clashes. MPs warn that continued defiance could plunge the country into unprecedented violence. This is not a normal protest. This is a nation at boiling point, standing at the threshold of collapse. Yet inside Downing Street, defiance continues. In his latest statement, Starmer accuses the establishment of plotting a silent coup, railing against judges, the monarchy, and even his own party. He threatens sweeping purges of the civil service and vows a snap election, but legal experts warn he no longer has the authority to dissolve Parliament under the shadow of the Supreme Court's ruling. His words, once commanding, now sound hollow. Each declaration of strength exposes weakness. Each promise of resilience reveals isolation. The Prime Minister, who built his career on integrity, now stands accused of corruption, hypocrisy, and betrayal. His credibility has collapsed, allies flee, and his power has been stripped away piece by piece.